submit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madam President. She categorically puts it that our governance is the sole biggest obstacle that we are facing, hindering or catalyzing our downfall to not realizing the dream of a self-reliant Africa. Now, before I dive into the question and answer session from the public, I want to ask one last question to each and every one of to each and every panelist we have today. We have all talked about uh we have all repeatedly given it to our attention that he who feeds you controls you. Currently, many African nations across the continent depend highly on their foreign aid. Now, my question is: the foreign aid is there; it helps a lot of sectors in the budgets in the countries of these nations, and already it's a necessary evil that already exists. Now, what practical steps do you see in mind that these nations can take up so that they can run away from dependency on this foreign aid in realization of a self-reliant continent? I'll start with Madame Mellon. Is she still on call, Madame Mellon? Yeah, Madame Mellon, I'll start with you on that. Madame Mellon, can you hear us? Madame Mellon 1, Madame Mellon 2, 3, 4, and 5. She's not getting us. Now I'll pass the question to I hope I can be heard. A thumbs up. I might be talking to myself and I'm thinking that everyone is getting my thumbs up if I'm heard. Yes, now the question I pass it to Mr. Colline. Um uh, uh, eh, yeah, that's great. You can hear me. So now I'll pass the same question to Colin. In realization, we have all understood that it was your very statement that everyone at the moment, the one who feeds you controls you. And right now, Africa is being fed by those nations. And Melon is having a network challenge. She was trying to speak to us, but she's having a network challenge. As she sorts out that, I'll go to Colin. So we have already realized that the African nation, the white nations, or the West, or the external nations are feeding us, they are controlling us, they're giving us foreign aid, and which foreign aid contributes a very good percentage to most budgets of these African nations. Now, what practical steps do you see are there that we can work upon, we can implement, we can put in place so that we run away from this foreign aid, because we are realizing that it is infringing even on our policy making. You yourself gave an example of Senegal in realization of paying their debts, and MY, the foreign banks gave them some conditions to fulfill in order to help them in restructuring of their loans and everything. Now here I'm talking about now foreign aid in terms of health, in terms of loans, in terms of a number of sectors, even in infrastructure settings, that these nations like gracefully enjoy and depend on. Yes, over to you, Mr. Colin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayanja. Um, about this question on how it can be practically done, already there are some practical lessons, there were some practical ideas that were in place. This is what they called the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA, which was set up in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And it was launched basically to foster economic integration and industrialization on the African continent and intra-trading amongst African countries. You should remember when Donald Trump became the US president for this term, he cut that USAID and all sorts of foreign aid to African countries. And if I'm not mistaken, majority of us know that majority of the African countries were happy with that. Why? Our African leaders were benefiting from that. Because I can give an example. When the money used to come for like mosquito nets, AIDS, look at the Ebola funds back then, you would hear like scenarios of how money is swindled. Money it can come to cater for the needy, to cater for the ones who need it, but it's swindled all of a sudden by the officials in the government. And that Trump cutting those ties, cutting that USAID, it was like a lesson to these African leaders to say that, okay, since Trump has cut us from USAID, it's time for us to do what? To realize ourselves. And we solve our African problems in an African perspective, not an imperialistic perspective. So the ACFTA itself, it's a good way to go. But the problem with that is that, like how High Excellency, Madam, the previous speaker, I've forgotten her name, sorry. She had stated that we have trust issues amongst ourselves, amongst our countries, amongst our individuals, and amongst our governments. Because I can give an example. You know, Ethiopia, they just recently opened the Grand Renaissance Dam, which is estimated to produce 5,160 megawatts of electricity. But they say that that money that built that dam is the biggest dam in Africa. The money was internally generated and it costed around $4.3 billion. So that trust issue people have within their governments, because like how the previous speakers had stated, that it starts from the governance itself. Why must they not have transparency towards the people, towards policy making, towards realizing the African dream? Why do they think of their pockets, their families, and themselves, and not the people they are leading? That's why it's so unfortunate that the last generation of leaders toward an African dream, they died in the 80s, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But the ones who we have in this 21st century, all they care about, as long as I'm in power, the foreign powers are happy, they let everything to be like the way it is. Despite there are a few who like work for the people. Because we should know that poor transparency, when it comes to resources, when it comes to funding, it can become like a bitter curse. Look at the oil drilling in Nigeria. Oil used to be like a blessing in Nigeria. It was a blessing in Dubai. It was a blessing in Qatar. That's why those countries, like they're in the first world. Nigeria, which realized that it had oil before the Middle Eastern countries, it instead like took it for granted. The leaders instead like swindled the money, and they ended up, and it ended up like becoming a curse to a point that IMF and all these foreign powers, they dictate. Because look at now, we're in an oil crisis.
I mean, Mr. Speaker, panelist.
Yes, please.
In a minute, can you summarize in a minute?
To summarize, I believe the ACFTA, it can be a good idea. But the problem is our leaders haven't tried to implement it. And we as countries are putting these stringent laws against our fellow Africans, again, which we cannot put on the foreign masters. That's why like it's still hard, like, you know, to be sovereign and speaking with one voice. And we end up like speaking like independent voices. Like our country is already fragmented, which is very bad for the continent itself. and for the African dream of 2063. I sign out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Colline. I pass the same question to Mr. Adrian. What practical steps can we have as African nations so that we run away from the foreign aid thing that we are so much dependent on?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. But my network is still disturbing me. I'm seeking for like 2 seconds for you to repeat the question so that I can listen to it carefully. Thank you.
Yes, like it was a statement by Mr. Colling that he who feeds you controls you. Now we realize a number of African nations highly, massively depend on foreign aid to run their budgets and their governments. Now, in the realization of our dream of a self-reliant Africa, what practical steps can be done to reduce dependency on foreign aid?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I like this question very much. And I have my submission. According to me and my analysis, I can discuss that in an African perspective, that me as an African, I don't need foreign aid. The problem with the African countries, it's the post-colonial leaders. That's a very big problem. And me, I can say that colonialism didn't exploit Africa very well. Colonialism didn't exploit us very well. Because if colonialism exploited us very well, these post-colonial leaders, they how can I say it? These post-colonial leaders, they didn't find any room to live in a luxurious life they are living in. African states, many of them are suffering because of these leaders. Take an example in Uganda. Let me base in Uganda, because I cannot go in Nigeria. Let me base on Uganda. Budgets are made. Ugandans borrow money, huge amounts of money from IMF, from World Bank, from Danida, from different countries. Donors come and give free money. Banks come, even some individuals come and they lend money to Uganda. But guess what? The president moving from Nakasero to Makerere University to visit the restored Ivory Tower, not even building a new one, but visiting the restored one. The president is spending billions of money. But you can even ride a bicycle. But you are spending billions just to move. Let me push this conversation further, Mr. Moderator. That Africa, in order, the first step and the last step is to regulate the expenditure by the African leaders. They are the problem. There is no problem. There is no. Maybe colonial masters didn't exploit us such that these leaders have a lot to steal. They have a lot to spend on. They have a lot to make themselves rich, to buy Rolls Royce, to fill their rooms with money. They have a lot to own herds of cattle. They have a lot to chase away people from their land. And at the end of the day, they go to IMF. And you want us to discuss the steps to avoid IMF and World Bank, and no way. It is these post-colonial leaders who are making us to depend on these people, the whites. Otherwise, if at all these people, they regulate on their expenditures, if at all these people, they adopt some policies, if at all these people feel the pain of Africans, if at all these people start suffering the way Africans are suffering down there, we have resources. The previous speaker talked about this. Africa is the richest continent. Africa is rich with minerals, with trees, lakes, rivers. People who are hardworking, fertile land. You find in Iraq, it is a desert country, but it is a rich country. In Uganda, it rains every day. But the people.
As you summarize your knowledge,
Yes, as I'm summarizing, my point I base on one step, and the last step is to regulate the life, the expenses, the luxurious life, the Antoinette's lifestyle of African leaders. That is the clear way to limit the strings attached, or to limit the loans or donors from Western world. Thank you, dear moderator.
Thank you so much, Mr. Senator. The Antoine style, the luxurious style of our leaders. I want to agree with our speaker on that. Now I want to pass the same question to, but I saw Mellon is out. She's still having network problems. I want to pass it to Madam President, Her Excellency Christine. What practical steps can African countries take to reduce this dependency on foreign aid in order to realize the in order to make the self-reliance dream come true? Yes, Madam Christine, I am kindly giving 5 minutes strictly to every speaker so that you get something to say. Yes, Madam President, the floor is yours. Madam Christina 1, are you getting me? Madam Christina 2, Madam Christina 3, Madam Christina 4 or 5, she's not getting me. Now I want to get questions from the
Hello?
audience.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
you're getting me? Madam Christine,
Yes, I am.
did you get the question?
Yes, I'm getting you.
Did you get the
Yes,
question?
I did.
Yeah, kindly
Yes,
submit.
I did.
Kindly submit on the question, madam.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because answers are many, but the main one is one. As the previous speaker has spoken, our issue is not luck. The issue is governance. And honestly, I believe, I have a feeling, okay, a leader is going to lead well when there is pressure. Pressure not only among the leaders, but also among the people. If us as the people, we force our leaders to do what we feel is right, they're eventually going to find a way to do what's right. But once we give them the luxury to think whatever they want, to do whatever they want, at any time they feel like, they'll just buy Rolls Royce. But if we put the pressure, because I feel like us as the people of Uganda, if we were to put more pressure on our leaders, these leaders were also going to put more pressure on the service, on the people in charge, who will also be able to do what they're supposed to do to get us somewhere. But the fact that everyone is just looking at everything We are just cowardly. No one is ready to speak up. We are all scared. One who would speak up, they say they will take you in a drone. So things like that make us fail. But if a day comes and we have now the ability, we have gained the confidence to fight for what we feel is truly right or ask for it, I feel like we shall get some positive results. We shall get some actual results. And besides the fact that the problem is the governance, our leaders who need checking, we also have to strengthen the few things that we have. For example, I'm just going to state them down so that I can be able to beat time. So I believe that we should strengthen the local production, especially of the things that we have in Uganda, so that we start generating more. If it's coffee, we make more that we can easily supply to our countries around, henceforth bringing the income back immediately and supplying in African countries because it's a little less costly and it makes us better. Unity makes people better. So unity can be through trade, through different things. And yeah, I feel like it's really important that way to strengthen our local production and the things we produce. Second point is to fight corruption. Seriously, not just by joking, not just by talking about it and we let things slide, not just waking up in the morning when the vibe is high, you talk, when the vibe goes low, you keep quiet. Just sticking to the point and we decide if we are to fight corruption, let's fight the corruption. Angie, the Sanja is no sleep. So if we are not to sleep fighting corruption, let us not sleep. There is this problem leaders have. They can come and start with pressure, but as time goes on, they just relax and let everything slide after them being comfortable. But at the start, everyone is very active. As citizens, I believe we should force those people to act up. When we feel like the pressure is becoming lower, make the pressure increase. Find ways to make sure those guys perform. Then the third point is improving our investments in agriculture. Yes, we invest in different things here and there. But I believe if the government chose to invest more in our agriculture, since we believe agriculture is the backbone, we shall be able to fund our lifestyle, fund the way things run in Uganda instead of asking for help from others. Because you can find when there is something very small that needs working on and the government is saying they cannot afford it.
In
But if we
Madam
were investing more in
President,
agriculture,
in 1 minute, Madam
okay,
President.
I'm very sorry. So let me just summarize everything. But investing in agriculture, support African trade, develop energy infrastructure, borrow carefully, not this random borrowing and stuff. Then invest in education and skills. Then encourage local businesses. Build stronger institutions for stronger outbreak. And then only accept aid in case of disease outbreaks, wars, natural disasters, or any other things. Other than that, I believe there is no reason why we would accept aid from other countries. Thank you very much, and I beg to submit.
Thank you so much, Madam President, for that submission. Madam Mellon, can you hear me? Madam Mellon, can you hear me? Madam Mellon at one, Madam Mellon at two, Madam Mellon at three, or four, or five. She's not getting us. Now I want to pass the mic to the audience. I'm seeing Mr. Carlos's hand up. What are our submissions or our additions to the question in play today? What can we do in realization of a self-reliant Africa? Yes, Mr. Carlos, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mayanja Abdul. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chonka Patrick. the Prime Minister School of Education. And I'm sorry that I joined in a bit late, but I've happened to figure out that we are talking about a very interesting discussion on what can we do to make Africa self-reliant. And Honorable Abudu, the reason as why I've raised my hand is that I have a burning question that I believe I want to pass on to all the panelists to give me their view. And my question is, if as of today we are still asking ourselves, what can take Africa to the next level? What can make Africa stop to be over dependent on the European? But my question is going to go back to all the panelists to answer on this question. Why is it that during the colonial era, Africans tended to be more focused on same issues that we are patterning them or they were going through, and we are more united? And why is it that ever since we attained independence in the pre-colonial era, Africans have not remained the same? So this is a question I believe that every panelist, Mr. Abudu, would give an answer, because the reason as why we are all talking about this, that what can make Africa self-reliant, this question was asked so many years ago, and various scholars argued that yes, we agree that we attained a political independence, but not an economic independence. But again, after so many years, again, we are still experiencing the same problems, even though we attained our colonial
Mr. Kalu,
independence.
I request you repeat the question.
Yeah, the
You repeat
question is that I want to every panelist to share about, if we are talking about how to make Africa self-reliant again, why is it that ever since the colonial era, if you are to compare the two periods, the colonial era and the pre-colonial era, that within the colonial era, all Africans seemed to be collectively together. But ever since we attained our independence, African countries are so detached and they are no longer prioritizing on the national interest. Yet before, they were highly collective prioritizing on the national interest. That is the question. And I believe that if you are to answer this question, would be more practical to see where could be the gist on why Africa is still not self-reliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Carlos. Mr. Kato, your question, please. Mr. Kato, I see your hand up. I'm not. I want to get your question. I think he's not getting us. Any other question from the audience? Now, since we don't have any other question from the audience, I want to give a chance to our panelists to give their parting shots as they answer the question from Mr. Carlos that stated that during colonial times, these country and nations that were under these colonial masters were collective.
Mr.
Yes, Mr. Kato, ask your question.
Yeah, my question are they getting me?
Yes,
Hello?
you're getting, sir. You're getting you, sir.
Yeah, Mayanja is my name, the good speaker of Kampala Polytechnic. My question probably goes to Mr. Adrian. He's a teacher by profession. When you look at the UNESCO strategy, that which is 2010 to 2015, it gave a legal framework of enabling the formation of what we call as the technical institution. Yeah, and the institutions were being formed in Uganda due to that legal framework. And when you look at right now, as we talk right now in Uganda, you realize that the nation Uganda has come with a point of introducing what we call as technical institution to fulfill a vision to fulfill Uganda's vision 2040. Do you believe, Mr. Adrian, that the strategy of the Vision 2040 is making Africa, is it making Africa self-reliant? Because right now we are seeing that we have solved the problem of unemployment. As I conclude, I will conclude by asking you another question. Do you believe that the introduction of the competent-based curriculum in the nation Uganda is also a solution to making Uganda self-reliant? Mr. Adrian, I beg to submit.
Thank you so much.
Not yet. Yeah, kindly. Not yet, not yet. I'm still getting questions. I want to get them at once. Do you have any other questions from the audience? Any other questions from the audience? Yes. If we don't have any other questions from the audience, I want us to give. I'll now give the chance to our speakers to give their parting shots and answer the questions that they have been directed to. Now we have two questions. One that is to all of you from Mr. Carlos, that says that during the colonial times, these nations were collective in nature, but ever since they attained independence, they have never remained the same in sort of their nationalism. From Mr. Katoto Adrian specifically, he talks about the Vision 2040 and sees it as one that is making self-reliant, and he asks for your opinion to that. And he also asks about the CBC curriculum and sees it as a very instrumental tool to revolutionizing education in Uganda and helping it having a self-reliant state of view. So yes, I'll start with Adrian. Kindly, within 3 minutes, answer that question and give your participants.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And Mr. Kato, by the way, you have asked a good question about competency-based curriculum because recently I have heard an someone is calling anyway with a college principal of our college, the vice chancellor, academic leaders from Makerere University about this competency-based education. That when we talk about competency-based education, it is really good, and people are exaggerating competency-based education. Really, you see that whenever they talk about it, you feel like Uganda has achieved. You feel like Africa has achieved. And up to now, people are there eating money. People are there comfortably that we have achieved, we have worked. Yes, it is good. It focuses on skills, problem solving, creativity, communication. The agenda is good. The agenda is good. But let me tell you this, Mr. Kato and the moderator, Uganda is not Kampala. When we talk about Uganda, it's not Kampala. Many schools in Kampala have tried to implement competency-based education, but Kampala is not Uganda. We have many schools down there. The agenda is not yet fully implemented. The implementation gap is still the challenge. We talk about competency-based education, but schools, when our children are still studying with the cows, when you invest much in the military and invest little in the education sector, you think that competency-based education can yield in Uganda. When people are overcrowded in classrooms, even a teacher cannot even operate a laptop. Then how about a learner? Students are still yes, students are still under all the curriculum. The agenda is good, but 40% it has yielded in Uganda. Yes, the agenda is good, but we haven't got the yields of competency-based education. And it is a good idea, but it needs much energy for us to praise competency-based education. Thank you very much. I'll come back for the next question.
Mr. Adrian, you're not coming. Um, I give the opportunity to Mr. Colline answer the question and your parting shots.
Yeah, so about the question Mr. Carlos had given, that why did the pre-independence heroes get united, and as of now it's impossible? It's because it goes back to what like I had presented earlier about Pan-African coordination, whereby like people like Osagyefo for Nkrumah, Emperor Haile Selassie, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, Papa Samora Machel, all of them like they had a vision. Abdel Gamal Nasser of Egypt, they had a vision of a united Africa, speaking with one common voice, collectively bargaining, because they had that dream of having an Africa that is like on the level of the US. I remember even like I was watching a speech of Kano Gaddafi when he was at the swearing in ceremony of President Museveni in 2001. He was like, for him, he dreamt of like a united Africa, that we want an Africa that it's strong, that can also have like a common say, whereby like if it speaks, the whole world can also shake and they know that yeah, Africa has spoken. Not like a weak, ambivalent Africa, which is fragmented, broken. Because why, as of now, it's easier. It's because those leaders by then, it was easier to remove them. Either they were toppled through coups, or like they made them busy with insurgencies and civil wars, or they were even killed to a certain point. And then they bring in the ones who will instead serve the imperialistic masters. So currently we are in an era of leaders who like, if the imperialists and the foreign powers are happy, the ruler can do whatever he wants. Because even themselves, sometimes you can also sympathize with them. I think they can also be frightened. Sorry about that. They can also be frightened to a point that when the foreign powers come, they offer you what you want. If you're not willing to take it, they
Mr.
can even threaten you.
Comrade Colin, your parting
Yes.
shots. A minute.
Okay. As I finalize, basically Pan-African coordination, speaking with one voice, and also good governance to a point that we do not need to rely on the West, on the foreign powers to survive. If we can also build our own institutions that cannot be manipulated, that cannot be compromised by the foreign powers. And all of us dream of like a united Africa, an Africa that can speak, an Africa that can solve its problems, with African money and good leadership. And all of us dream of the 2063 African agenda. Thank you very much for this session, and I sign out.
Thank you so much, Mr. Colin. Passing the same question to Madame Christine and your parting shots. Madame Christina 1, Madame Christina 2, Madame Christina 3, 4.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can get you, Madame Christine. Continue.
Hello?
We can get you, Madame Christine.
Oh,
Continue.
that's great. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. So honestly, due to network issues, I was not very able to capture the question very well. But due to the factor of time, I'll just like to add on to what Honorable Colin has said. I believe that African countries, if we decide and unite to one common goal, we are going to be able to do better. We shall be able to get our self-reliance. We shall be able to gain our sovereignty and stuff. We shall be better. Because I feel like what makes us different from other countries and what makes us fail at that point is the fact that we are not united. There is no way Uganda, small as it is, yes, sometimes our presidents might be funny and think they can fight US, but it is hard to fight a country or a continent that is joined with various different countries and cities. It is hard. But if we are to join forces with all our African countries and become one, I believe a lot will change. We shall have a common goal and we shall do better. Thank you very much, and I'm very glad to have spoken here, and I'm very glad to submit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We had a problem with Melon. Her network was not fine. So she had the challenges with speaking to us. Now I'll call upon one of the Youth Impact Movement director. He's in here to have a few words to speak to us in commemoration of the Africa Day. My boss, strictly 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, our moderator, the Honorable Abdul Hakim, and to our host, Right Honorable Denis Ainemukama, and to our panelists, the students leader, the Pan-Africanist, the 92nd Glide Senator, and the Glide President from the Kampala Polytechnic. Thank you so much for joining us. Youth Impact Parliament has been built basically to build leaders to make Africa the dream we wish. Just taking a relook at today's activities, I was following the Parliament of Uganda, seeing the fall of Right Honorable Speaker Anita Annette Amang, who was to continue her tenure, but unfortunately she had a fall in power. And just today, Right Honorable Joseph Obot Obot was elected as Speaker. However, her deputy was retained. And then the question comes, what exactly is going on? Was it a threat to the president's power that led to that? Or that's not all. Just this week, we had a significant power play in Senegal with one of the youngest presidents letting go of his mentor who was serving as his prime minister, Sonko. And with just that, you are seeing the power play happening over there. Sonko, just tomorrow, will be back to parliament, and it is possible he'll become the president of the National Assembly of Senegal. These are just issues of power play in countries. For a continent that is wishing to be self-reliant, I think the question of resource is not a problem. Africa is blessed with a lot of natural resources. From my country, Ghana, with gold, going to other countries with manganese, silver, and call them all. Resource is not a problem for Africa. What is the problem? You and I know it is leadership, intentional leadership, determined leadership. African presidents know the truth. They know the way, but they choose to pass different routes. Just a few weeks ago, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria was asked a question when he was being interviewed at the African CEO Forum. He said, Africa can make it. We don't need to rely on external resources. We ourselves can close our borders, the border that is dividing each country, reduce them and allow for trade for us to be self-reliant. And then the panelists asked him, so Mr. President, why haven't you started? And he became pale and freeze for about minutes. And that was just the answer. He knew the right thing, but decided to go corrupt way. We African leaders, or the people who are leading our country, know the way forward. When Gaddafi was building his country, making education free, housing free, poverty was being annihilated, completely obliterated. What happened? He was sabotaged from among his own subordinates who sold him out to the Western world for him to be killed. Now Libya is just down. It is not a country to speak of again. When the correct leaders rise to lead and make a change, we sabotage them. They say power changes, but absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is what we keep on experiencing in Africa. Lumumba will say we are our own problems. And it hurts every time you reflect on the happenings in Africa. When the young rise to lead the country, the old block their way and chase them into exile. In the case of Bobby Wine. And it hurts every day. We as future leaders look upon the happenings. So what is the way forward? It's a question the panelists will really have to help us answer. For attitude to change, we need a lot of orientation and to change our entire belief system before this can be a reality. Because very soon we will be leading our countries. I will be leading Ghana, you'll be leading Uganda. Someone elsewhere will be leading his country. When we meet on leaders' platform, can we be accountable to ourselves that these were the values that we discussed today? Are we standing by them? Or will be corrupted by power to continue our greed? It hurts. But our leaders know the answers. But they decide to give false and altered doctrines to change the belief system for their own gain. So today we celebrate Africa, but we are still hopeful that the future will be better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, my boss, for that elaborate submission. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have been asking ourselves questions and answering them that are very dear and pertinent to us, the African question. And I want to thank everyone who has attended today. Thank you so much for your attendance, sparing time to answer questions that are really pertinent to us and that are really providing a torch to the future is a very important thing. To our panelists, you're the best people. You have made this day lively, and we really salute you. And to our executive director, Sir Commander, we salute you so much. A good night, you all. Thank you very, very much. I remain Mayanja Abdul Hakim, the Deputy Minority Whip of the Youth Impact Parliament, the Uganda chapter. Have a blessed night.